American Football Stories is brought to you by Coach Paint. Coach Paint is a great tool that allows us to add graphics to player highlight clips similar to the graphics you see on TV. Coach Paint offers the ability to clearly telestrate video while increasing retention of information in a shorter amount of time. Up your game with Coach Paint today.
What time is it? Game time! It's gonna be special. They gonna talk about this forever.
Welcome to American Football Stories.
Puts his head down, crashes and spins, and dives. Touchdown!
Bringing together the many perspectives that make up college football in the NFL.
Football is one of the greatest sports ever invented.
From players and coaches.
Believe, baby, believe, baby.
Hey, we playing to win right here, fellas.
To the front office and scouts.
The public is finally beginning to catch up, but they don't even know half the truth.
Us against the world, let's get it.
Your hosts, Robert Parker and Nick Knudsen, bring you American Football Stories.
Welcome to the American Football Stories podcast, brought to you by Coach Paint. Today is January 6th, 2020. I'm your host, Nick Knudsen, joined by my co-host, Robert Parker, and we are welcoming in Justyce Gordon from the Extra Point podcast. It streams on ESPN 1600 in Denver every Saturday morning. I believe it's at 9 a.m. Eastern, right, Justyce?
9:30.
9:30 a.m. 9:30 a.m. Eastern out in Denver. So be sure to check out those guys streaming. Robert, of course, is a part of that podcast, along with our friends Roland Rainey and Jeremy Coleman. So that's always good stuff from those guys over at the Extra Point. But we're having Justyce on here to focus on one topic. It could be a small topic. It could be a big topic, however you hold the Jets, the New York Jets in your heart. But we know Justyce, he unfortunately chose at some point to align himself with the New York Jets. I'm a Jacksonville Jaguars fan, so I can relate. But so we want to focus on not just the 2020 season and the disaster that it was, but really the whole story leading up to it, because that's the more interesting part. And that's almost like the interesting thing when you root for a crappy team is the breakdown of how we got here and where we're going after. So that's that's at least the things that keep you holding on. So I want to know, first off, you're from the New York area, but what about the Jets drew you in at some point?
For me, it's like most people, you grow up with family. My dad was a Jets fan. My grandfather was a Jets fan. I kind of grew up around that arena, and I just fell in love with the green and white. It's been tough, rooting for them over the years. Had a lot of stressful years, a lot of down years. The only years we've been able to hang our hats on was the 2009-2010 seasons where we went to the AFC Championship, And 2015, we were close again, but, week 17, we fell apart. And, we've been rebuilding ever since. So, it's been a struggle.
I'm going to let Rob jump in.
Yeah, Justyce, thanks for coming on the show again, man. I definitely appreciate that. But once again, let's talk about the Mike Maccagnan era. Could you break down what went wrong under Mike Maccagnan and talk about, the draft picks that they brought on board throughout the draft? I know some of those players are still there and some of those players are not still there. Probably, two players out of that draft class under Mike Maccagnan. So could you break that down and break down the draft classes before that?
Well, Rob, just for the folks at home, because I know Justyce probably knows all this by heart, but for the folks at home that don't follow the Jets as close, you want to walk them through? We got some notable draft picks for each of the 4 years Maccagnan. Did you want to walk them through that?
Yeah, we could definitely walk Justyce and our audience through that. So notable draft picks, let's just go back to that 2015 season where, the number one, in the round one pick was Leonard Williams. And then, you have Devin Smith and Bryce Petty. So could you just break down what went wrong with those players? Was it a system fit? Was it a coaching thing? Could you just break that down for our audience, Justyce?
Man, to this day, Leonard Williams, I still don't know what went wrong. That kid coming out of USC, he was many analysts, thought he was the best player in the entire draft.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this kid had size, he had speed, hand technique. He had everything, people look for as in a defensive tackle. And he could never get it fully together with us. I don't know what it was. Maybe it was the lack of help on the defensive line. We haven't had an edge rusher in probably over a decade. I know Muhammad Wilkerson, he kind of hit the tail end of his career. He got paid and then he kind of fell off. Sheldon Richardson, he kind of fell off as well. I think he signed with the Cleveland Browns a few years later. He's been an okay pro, nothing too special since. But, Leonard Williams, he actually just had a 3-sack week last week with the Giants. So it looks like he's finally putting it together. I'm happy for him. It sucks it's not with us, but, we have our own Williams on our roster right now. Quinnen Williams, I love him. He's really developed this past year, and I'm excited to see him. Our defensive line has some studs. So, I'm happy for Leonard Williams, but, him personally, it's a disappointment. But Bryce Petty, oh man, that was a reach pick. We were going through quarterback carousel. We really didn't have one. I think we kind of picked him up just to make Jets fans happy. Jets fans, they were loving the Bryce Petty pick. They liked him. He came from a spread system. Everyone thought he was gonna develop into a good quarterback. He had a good few starts for us, but ultimately he just didn't have the intangibles. He had an average arm. Really wasn't mobile. Really wasn't quick. The pocket presence wasn't there. He's a backup quarterback. A depth quarterback at best, and I don't even think he's in the league anymore. So, for him, it was just a bad pick all around. And Devin Smith, to round it out, he couldn't stay healthy. His frame was slender. I think he broke his ribs in the first training camp. He wasn't built for the NFL. I know he was with Dallas last year. Didn't really last too long, but I just think, him personally, it just wasn't a great pick. And speaking of wide receivers that Mike McCagnon has picked over the years, I want to go back to a few years ago when he picked Chad Hansen and Adarius Stewart in back-to-back rounds. They are both, I think Chad Hansen, he is with the Houston Texans right now. They're banged up. He had a few games, but that was one of the worst draft classes I've ever seen in my life. To have them back-to-back was just atrocious, and they have both not even lived up close to what their draft pick was, and it haunts me to this day.
Well, let's bring some more ghosts in front of you here. We got Darren Lee in the 2016 pick, the first pick of the 2016 draft. This almost feels mean, doesn't it, Rob? I thought this was going to be a little fun. This is starting to feel a little mean here, but Darren.
It really does. I mean, you try to strike on your quarterback goal with Bryce Petty, and then you come in the next year and you draft Christian Hackenberg.
Yeah.
I mean,
at least we got that one right? No,
in the second round. My God.
Oh God. It's got to hurt a little bit though.
Oh, it definitely hurts. It's been such a long way. I mean, Christian Hackenberg. I mean,
that guy was supposed to leave early from Penn State, right? Didn't he declare that he's coming back for his senior year? That was he was going to enter the draft early the year before.
Yeah, it was a total disaster waiting to happen. I mean, that was around the time where Penn State had that big scandal. The program wasn't the same, and a lot of analysts, criticized him about his mechanics, and they were right. He just wasn't that quarterback, and to take him in the second round, I mean, it's a testament to what Mike McCagnon was, and that was he was brought into this role for his drafting ability, and he did nothing in that sort over the 4 or 5 years he was here, and he really killed the roster because of it.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. What happened with Darren Lee? I mean, Darren Lee coming from Ohio State, he was another big time, name coming out of college. What happened with that transition?
Man, what hurts about Darren Lee is we passed on Jalen Smith for Darren Lee, which was heartbreaking. I mean, Darren Lee, he was what, 230 coming out, and
he was good at Ohio State though.
Yeah,
he played some good ball at Ohio State.
He was all over the field at Ohio State.
Yeah,
but, coming into a 3-4 system, putting him in the middle against those, those big uglies, You know, it was a tough transition for him. He had, you know, on and off moments. He had, you know, a few stretches of games where he had picks and, you know, he was playing well, but, you know, he was too small for the position. You know, it never worked out. And, you know, passing on Jalen Smith, it hurts to this day, man. You know, the Cowboys are talking about, you know, him taking a pay cut. And if he doesn't take it, they're going to release him. I hope they do. And I hope we pick him up.
He was coming off, was it ACL or did he do the entire knee in the Fiesta?
That was the most gruesome injury I've ever seen.
It was pretty brutal.
I felt bad for him. It was in the bowl game.
Yeah.
And that was around the time that really sparked, like after he hurt his knee, the following years, players started sitting out of bowl games. And that was really the spark. It sparked so many conversations about, are these players selfish? All that, you know, they're not selfish. I mean, you got to protect yourselves. You know, it was so heartbreaking to see him go down in that fashion.
Yeah. Was that still the first round he got picked by, or did he fall to the second to the Cowboys?
The second round.
The second.
Yep.
Yeah, man. Well, don't worry. We got some good news for you. Excellent first round pick in 2017, a fellow by the name of Jamal Adams. Very good player. So the Jets are set for a long time at safety. And Marcus May, Rob, we're Gators. Not too shabby. Marcus May.
Yeah, it kind of seemed like you guys hit goal in the 2017 draft, especially with, you know, two safeties in Jamal Adams and Marcus May. But I mean, one of those guys are still with the Jets and the other one's not. So
really?
Can you walk us through that decision and that transition? What happened with that?
Oh man, this to this day, I don't know what exactly it was, because during that whole, you know, TV saga, if you want to call it, like, Jamal Adams changed his story, you know, here and there. First, it was Joe Douglas wasn't offering him the contract he wanted. And then late in the process, it was, oh, he doesn't like Adam Gase. Maybe that was just a tool to get him out. Maybe it was the contract. I don't know what exactly it was. It's, you know, Jamal Adams, when we picked him, I was super excited. The kid was phenomenal, energetic, a leader, was all over the field. And to see him leave the way he did, you know, I was kind of mad at him, you know, the way he left. I don't blame him for, you know, wanting to leave Gase. You know, Adam Gase is just terrible. My God, I'm so glad he's gone. Jet fans, we can breathe. We're getting a new coach. Hopefully we make the right decision. But, you know, to let Jamal Adams slip through our hands like that, you know, it definitely hurts. But, you know, 2 first-round picks for him, you know, it kind of makes us feel a little better.
I'm pretty sure it does. But once again, Marcus May, I mean, I know he wasn't highly touted coming out of Florida, but he's been playing some solid ball. Like you've seen him, you know, throughout this year, make some solid plays, you know, pass deflections and breakups and, you know, solid tackler. So at least you have one of those guys. I know he's not Jamal Adams, but he's no slouch.
Yeah, he's making one-handed interceptions. He's doing it all for us right now. The weird thing is he's going to be what, 27, 28 when his rookie contract is up. You know, I know Joe Douglas the other day said, you know, re-signing him is a priority. So, you know, we'll see what happens there. I would like to have him back. You know, he's a playmaker on that back end. You know, I think we could use someone beside him with Jamal gone. And that cornerback room, don't get me started on that. But, you know, Marcus May, you know, he's been a good player for us. You know, he's handled everything well. And I hope we get him back.
So 2018, which my understanding is McCagnon, he did not make the draft picks in 2019.
From my understanding,
because that was weird.
He made the draft picks in 2019, and then after
they fired
him
right away.
It was the weirdest sequence I've ever seen.
Well, let's go 2018. Obviously, the highlight was Sam Darnold.
Yes.
So Darnold, where are you at with Darnold right now with the opportunity to sit in the 2 spot and potentially take Justin Fields?
When we drafted Sam Darnold, I was happy. I thought we found our quarterback of the future.
Yeah.
You know, I still remember his first game. You know, the very first play of his career was a play action pass. He threw a pick 6. You know, it got me a little nervous, But he bounced back well in that game. I think he threw 2 touchdowns, 200 plus yards. He had a solid game. The way he was able to respond was good. He had a few promising moments his rookie year against the Texans, against the Packers. They battled him head to head. He had, 300 plus yard games, multiple touchdown games. But, watching him this year, I'm done with Sam Darnold. I really am. Look, a lot of this is to blame on Adam Gase. I get it. They didn't develop him. They did a terrible job with him. There was no one to really coach him, but he has done nothing but regress. His mechanics are the same as back in college. He hasn't really, improved on that. His decision making was a big question coming out of college, and it still is now. He hasn't really improved there. He can make all the throws, but he's so inconsistent. I can't even count on my fingers how many throws I've seen him miss this year. I've seen him miss countless reads, wide open reads this year. I don't know what's going on with him. I think ultimately it's his confidence. One of the most important things in players is their confidence. They have to believe in their talent, and I think Sam Darnold, he's shot right now. He doesn't believe in himself. I think a change of scenery for both players, both Sam Darnold and the Jets organization is what's best. It's funny, Justin Fields. Uh, before that game last week, a lot of people were calling him a bust. They were calling him a bum, and Robert can attest for me for this. In our little group chat, I said, sit back, relax. Justin Fields is fine. He's gonna come out. He's gonna play well. I believe in the kid. I've heard. He's from Ohio State. Ohio State's not known for the quarterbacks, but I'm on board with this kid. I hope to see him ball out against Alabama, and going forward in this draft, I'll take Justin Fields or Zach Wilson.
Now, yeah, Fields. Anyone who is tearing down Fields because of what he's been doing in 2020 didn't watch much of him in 2019 because he's one of the best I've ever seen at Ohio State. It's unbelievable. But really, we started seeing 2019 is when this season was really born. With the 2020, the foundations for 2020 was laid at the beginning of 2019. Maccagnan goes out, hires Adam Gase. After Gase is fired from Miami, 3-year stint with the Dolphins, it seemed like the relationship quickly soured because 2 months later, they signed Le'Veon Bell for a 4-year, $52.5 million deal with the Jets. Schefter noted the deal could be worth up to $61 million, $35 million guaranteed. And apparently the crazy part about this contract is the only other real offer he had on the table was a 3-year, $40 million offer from the 49ers, his next best offer. So you pretty much the Jets outbid themselves for the guy, which made Gase livid, understandably so. But what is that what screwed up the dynamic with, because Maccagnan did hire Gase, right? Like he was the guy in charge hiring Gase, right? That wasn't like an ownership thing. They went out. If you don't know for sure, that's fine.
I don't know for sure.
Yeah.
I think Maccagnan did hire him. I'm pretty sure he did.
I was under the impression that he did, but so why? It's just crazy to me that within a couple months, their relationship would sour that quickly over seemingly one thing. Or is that just what it seems like from the outside? Because that's what that was my impression of it.
Yeah. From my understanding and from the reports I've read, I think I've heard Adam Gase didn't love the draft picks. Mike Maccagnan did that year. And I think Le'Veon Bell was the straw that broke the camel's back. There were reports instantly that, Adam Gase didn't like Bell. He didn't want Bell. He thought they paid too much for him. My view on Le'Veon Bell when we signed him, all Jets fans were hammering for this guy, get the star running back in here. But what people didn't understand was when he was in Pittsburgh, he had a top 5 offensive line. And for a running back that runs as patiently as he does, the offensive line is the number one thing. And my argument from day one was, if we sign Le'Veon Bell, that's great, but we have to get our offensive line situated And we did not do that at all. We had the worst offensive line in football in 2019, and that's what led to Le'Veon Bell's horrendous year. Um, and yeah, it was sad to see Bell go out the way he did, but he handled himself well the whole time he was here. Nothing but class, a true leader. But as far as Gase and McCagnon, I think Le'Veon Bell was definitely the point where it overboiled at that point.
So we talk about the 2019 draft. Quinnen Williams with the number 3 pick. In the 3rd round, you grabbed edge rusher Ja'Kai Polite out of the University of Florida. And before you react to it, Rob, tell Justice how good that man was in the Gators uniform before he left for the NFL.
Yeah, I mean, this was the decision that baffled me. I just didn't understand this. Like you
first round talent, right?
First round talent. The only thing that you can probably question was his motor, but at the end of the day, he had all the moves that you need to get to the quarterback. So I just didn't understand like how you go from drafting Ja'Kai Polite to not having him on your roster. Like how did that happen?
Well, you're a Florida guy, so you probably know it. There were a ton of off-field issues with this guy. There were reports out there. I don't remember exactly what it was. Maybe it was drugs. I'm not sure what exactly it was, but there were a lot of off-field issues with the kid. I watched film on him. Talent-wise, he was a first-round talent, like you said. I had some concerns. The body type. Could he hold up? Is he just a pure 3rd down rusher? Did as far as the pick goes, I didn't like it. To be honest, I kind of settled on it. I was hopeful. He had the talent, but as training camp came, the first year went by. There were reports out there that he wasn't working hard. He was kind of slacking a little bit. I think he added 10 pounds of fat, not muscle. He was a little out of shape. So the release didn't really surprise me. But Robert, maybe you know this. Maybe you know better than I do. Is he on an NFL roster right now?
Yeah, he's not. He's not right now.
That speaks to what you're talking about, Justice.
Yeah, exactly. And it's baffling right now because just like you said, first round talent, and it just seems like he didn't have those issues in Florida. So one thing that I want to talk about is, through the draft, when we talk about the draft, we talk about hitting on the right prospects. Could you dive in and tell our audience, like, how hard it is to come in this New York market and perform well with the fan base, whether it's the Jets, whether it's the Giants? Could you talk about, just the added pressure of being in the New York market and being and performing on a high level?
Yeah, seriously, have you heard Justice say one nice thing about a Jets player tonight? It's brutal.
Well, look, I mean, it's no secret, New York is it's the Mecca, it's the toughest place to play. We have, the biggest amount of press, the most amount of press. If one guy has one bad game, we jump on him. We don't have a lot of patience. This New York media likes to jump on everything, any chance they get. Me, myself, I'm a little more patient. I like to, sit back and watch. But, as far as the New York market, it is what it is. I mean, it comes with the territory. It's made for, the guys. It's made for certain guys. It's not for some. So it's definitely, we're the best fans in the world, in my opinion. It's a great place to play. We'll ride or die with our guy. If you show up and you play, we're with you. But, you really got to have a certain mindset to play in New York, definitely.
And with that being said, Justice, is that something that, front office or the GM currently on the Jets staff have to look as far as when drafting these prospects? Is that something from a mental standpoint we're saying, hey, this guy, I don't think he can hold up in this market. I don't think he can handle, the media. I don't think he can handle the backlash. Is that something that comes in with the draft evaluation, or are you just guys just looking at talent?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, Robert. I would hope so, that Joe Douglas, looks at the character and, make sure they can handle the New York media. But what's interesting about that question in particular to me is this past draft, they selected Mekhi Becton, Denzel Mims, Ashton Davis, Michael P. Ryan, Bryce Hall, and most, if not all of those guys were team captains on their team. So I think that says something about what Joe Douglas is looking for. I think it sends the right message. He's looking to bring in leaders. He's looking to bring in guys who can grow with this team and who can make a career with this team. And I'm glad he's thinking that way. It looks like he is thinking that way. And I would hope he continues, to bring in those guys who have that strong mind, because you definitely need it in New York.
That's a great tie-in with the Ja'Gai Polite situation there, Rob. But speaking of Joe Douglas, so McCagnon gets fired after the draft in May 2019. Gase takes over the interim role, immediately makes a couple moves, right? Didn't he trade Darren Lee like hours after McCagnon was fired? He traded him to Kansas City. Like, Douglas gets hired a month later, and Douglas is this highly sought after candidate that had been, I think he had been tied in, rumored to the Jets before. But what made him so attractive for the GM role with the Jets, and why did he settle on the Jets after his time with Philly? So he comes from what is a fairly stable organization. They tried a little bit of funkiness with Chip Kelly, and then immediately went back to the old school way, like with Howie and everything. And they really have been one of the more stable organizations in the last 2 decades in football, the Eagles. So what makes him want to go to the Jets on top of that? Did he get a certain deal or X amount of control or what?
I think it was just his desire to want to build the team. It was an opportunity. We've been struggling for years. So I think that's a testament to who he is as a person. He wants to take on a challenge. But the biggest thing that I've heard when he was hired that really tied him into this job was Adam Gase was the one who actually pulled for him. He was the one that actually basically hired Joe Douglas. So it's kind of interesting in that aspect because, this year was so horrible. I remember week 4 versus the Broncos. Jets fans were saying, okay, we got a bye week next week. We fire him after week 4. We get that extra week and a half to get in the interim coach in here so we can develop we can get a smooth system in here. And when he wasn't fired after week 4, everyone kind of hit the panic button. They kind of, what's going on? And I think that left Joe Douglas in an interesting position because Adam Gase was the one who hired him. And I think ultimately what kept Gase there for that full year this year was Joe Douglas, because I think Joe Douglas wanted to, give Adam Gase the full year. He didn't want to embarrass him and fire him mid-year. I think that was kind of a sign of respect for Adam Gase getting him in here. But, I'm glad Joe Douglas and Christopher Johnson did the right thing and, getting Gase out of there.
Yeah. So with that being said, so, Joe Douglas was hired in June 2019. And then, Jamal Adams, he demands a trade. So what was the primary cause for that Jamal Adams demanding a trade? Was it contract? Was it, the scheme? I know it was talks about, he really didn't like the way the Jets was kind of using him. What was it that, or was it more of the contract, or was it Adam Gase, or was it all of the above?
Yeah, that's a loaded question, Robert. Wow. I can say with confidence it wasn't the scheme at all. From my understanding, Jamal Adams loved playing for Greg Williams. Greg Williams loves to blitz, the zero blitz that cost us the Raiders game, but that's a different topic for a different day.
You brought that up, but yeah, I didn't say it.
Yeah, he loves to blitz. He loves to move players around, and I think Jamal loved that. Going back to what I said earlier, I really don't know what was going on in Adams' head, why he wanted to leave. Was it the contract? Was it Adam Gase? I think ultimately, if I had to say, I think it was the contract. I think he was entering his this was the 3rd year, I believe. So the Jets had a control for him for, another 2 years with the 5th year option, and they were kind of tight with cap space this year. From what I heard, Joe Douglas wanted to, wait another year, and because we have like $80 million coming in this year, So he wanted to wait till 2020 to extend him, but Jamal wanted his money now. I saw a few stories that his dad got injured, and he had to hang up his cleats because of an injury, and that could have been a cause to why he wanted his money. He wanted security, which I can respect, but I think ultimately it was the contract. I don't love the way he left. I think it was a little selfish, going on social media, trashing everybody, kind of forcing his way out. But I can't blame him for wanting his money, and I can't blame him for not wanting to play for Gase.
Speaking on the way that Jamal Adams went out, talking about that Twitter spat, we actually seen Jamal Adams and Le'Veon Bell kind of going back and forth at it. Like, what was the underlying reason for those guys? I mean, it just seemed like they were cool while they were on the same roster, but it kind of went left really, really quick. So could you dive in that and tell our audience about that?
Yeah, this is a great topic because it's so interesting. For Jet fans who don't follow the team that well, Jamal Adams was the player who recruited Le'Veon Bell. The moment Le'Veon Bell hit the market, Jamal was blowing up his phone with text messages saying, come to New York. The culture's changing. I'm here for the long haul. We're gonna make this right. We're gonna do all these big things in New York. And then Jamal Adams, forces his way out. And I think that kind of left a sour taste in Le'Veon Bell's mouth, which is true because here's this guy talking up the New York Jets, talking about how he's here for the long haul, he wants to change the culture, all this rah-rah stuff, and then you leave because you want to throw a temper tantrum. Like, I don't blame Le'Veon Bell for kind of getting upset. He kind of left him here dead with this roster and with Adam Gase, and it's definitely funny to think about, and I don't blame Le'Veon Bell at all. I think, he was in the right in this situation.
Or if you're Jamal Adams, you could say, actually, I put you on a roster that's headed to the Super Bowl. You're welcome. Like I promised you. Yeah.
That is true. He did end up going to the Chiefs. I mean, all signs are pointing up for them. Another back-to-back Super Bowl for them, probably.
2 first-round picks for Adams from the Seahawks. 1 third-round and safety Bradley McDougal. I believe they sent – did they send a 4th round back to the Seahawks? The Jets might have traded a 4th and all that, but
I think they just sent a 4th. Yeah.
Hey man, if you're gonna rebuild, I mean, honestly, it sucks losing a player like Adams, but do you think the short-term pain is worth the long-term gain here?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No
doubt, really, right? With this roster situation this year, especially the way the season played out because it's just happened over the summer, right? So it's like, I mean, if you had Adams here while this season was going on, griping, that value would have just gone down and down. Like, good on Douglas for making pulling the trigger on that trade.
Yeah, it definitely hurt, seeing him get traded, but 2 first-round picks. I mean, man, what a haul. I couldn't fault Joe Douglas at all. It was a great trade. I think it was great value. I'm looking at this class this year. We can grab, one of the quarterbacks early and, grab one of these wide receivers in the late first round. Me and Robert have been talking about this. This wide receiver class this year could very well be better than last year's. And last year's was probably the best ever. And to see a receiver class possibly surpass that with Devontae Smith, Jamar Chase, Rashad Bateman, Jalen Waddle, this class is loaded. And, if we can grab one of those receivers with that second first-round pick, I think that could help out the new quarterback or Sam Darnold. Maybe they do keep him around. I wouldn't be too happy with that. But, adding talent around him couldn't hurt. So as far as value for Jamal, I couldn't be happier.
Rob, are you giving Sam Darnold a shot? Is it not fair to, like, when you talk about Justyce admitted the offensive line hasn't been very good, like, do we really get a true evaluation of Sam Darnold, or would you give him another shot, or is Justin Fields sitting there just too good to pass up?
I think Justin Fields sitting there at 2 is just too good to pass up. And one of the reasons why is that, you see a lot of these offenses kind of go into that RPO spread style. And kind of when you hear the rumors out there with Urban Meyer might possibly teaming up with either Trevor Lawrence or Justin Fields, that just, makes the pot thicken a little bit even more. So I think Sam Darnold needs a fresh start. And just like Justice mentioned earlier, when it comes to these players, one thing that they can lean on is their confidence. And it really seemed like, Sam Darnold didn't really get that confidence going in New York. Whether it was because it was a big market, everyone was bashing him, whether he was nicked up or banged up, whether it was the offensive line, whether it was Adam Gates. So Sam Darnold, to his credit, he did have a lot of stuff going against him. But, as a player, you kind of have to control the controllables. And Sam Darnold still went out there and turned the ball over. Sam Darnold still went out there and, missed players that was wide open and misread. So I think you have to move on with Sam Darnold. You have to bring in, somebody fresh, whether that's Justin Fields, whether it's, Penei Sewell, the offensive lineman out of, Oregon, and kind of, pair him up with Mekhi Becton. So I think it's a lot of ways that you can go if you're the Jets in this draft, and build those pieces that you need moving forward so you can have a solid team.
We think about that, Justice.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I agree 100% what he said about Sam Darnold. His confidence is shot. It just you can just see it when you throw on the tape. I mean, he's missing throws that he's made his whole career. Like, it just doesn't make any sense. He's missing these wide open reads that just any quarterback can make. Like, it's crazy to me. Like, I think our offensive line right now isn't as bad as it was. Mekhi Becton, we got him. He's going to be our franchise.
Beast.
Yeah, he's a beast. I mean, George Fant on the right side, he's a solid player. I like him. I like him quite a bit. He's athletic. He can keep up with those edge rushers. He did a great job against Nick Bosa. He's a solid left tackle. I like our center, Connor McGovern. I think the two holes right now are the two guard spots. If we could upgrade those spots, I think we're in good shape. But yeah, Justin Fields sitting there at 2. I think it's too much value right there. My main argument for moving on from Sam is he's going to enter his 4th year next year. The 5th year's coming. You got to pay him soon. This roster needs talent. Why spend $30 million, whatever it's going to cost, to keep Sam Darnold around and rebuild him and rebuild his confidence when you have so many holes on this roster? Like, get a rookie. We got a generational talent coming in. Grab him. He's on a 5-year contract. Get those 5 years, build that team, and then you're set. Hopefully, if you build it the right way, you're set for the future.
Yeah, when you put it in terms of dollars, it's almost a no-brainer. Like, that's a no-brainer whatsoever. All right, well, let's walk through, for those who don't follow the Jets too closely. We're not going to dwell on all the losses, but let's talk about the near wins and the wins. And Rob, if you want to read them off and get his quick reaction to each one.
Yeah. So we had week 4 against Denver, 37-28. Good shot to win against Brett Ripken. Could you give me a reaction in regards to that particular game?
Well, that particular game, I actually wanted us to lose because I was hoping Gase would be fired the next day, but that didn't happen, of course. But as far as that game goes, I think I saw what I saw all year was a secondary that can't cover. Pierre Desir, he got toasted a few times. He had 2 picks, ironically, that game, so he kind of redeemed himself. But the cornerbacks, we have no corners on our roster. That's a big thing we need to work on this offseason. Our linebackers were diminished that game. We had a few gash runs by Melvin Gordon and them. Sam Darnold, that was actually when he injured his shoulder. He missed a read, and that's why he got injured. He missed a read across the middle, held on for it for 2 more seconds, and got slammed on the shoulder. That's one of the plays, that people don't really look at and don't really mention. He missed quite a few throws that game, actually, to Jameson Crowder a few times. And yeah, it was just an ugly game. He had that great run at the beginning. I think it was like a 46-yard touchdown run, which was great. It was a nice flash. But, ultimately, coaching said a lot in that game. There was a 4th-string quarterback, 3rd-string quarterback, and we still couldn't win. I mean, come on. I mean, that's on Adam Gase. That just shows how poor of a coach he is.
Yeah, so shortly after that, you had Le'Veon Bell getting released. And then week 7 against Buffalo, that you had the lead at the halftime, and then you get shut out in the second half. Like, what was that?
That was coaching, you know. The Broncos made adjustments, the Jets didn't. I mean, that just screams Adam Gase's incompetence.
All right, so let's go into the New England game, Week 9, 30-27. Blew that late lead, give up 4 scores and 4 drives to the Pats. Lost on the last second field goal. How was your Jets pandemonium after that game?
I was loving the first half. Joe Flacco, he looked really good. 2 touchdowns the first half. He looked on point, but you know, we fell apart big in the second half. Bill Belichick made the perfect adjustment. Second half, he comes out, he pounds the rock. He absolutely killed us on the ground the second half. And it was a tight game going into the fourth quarter. And man, Joe Flacco had such a great game, but he threw that pick in the fourth quarter that shifted that momentum. Our defense couldn't stop him. They ended up settling for a field goal. They made Cam settle for a field goal. They bended but didn't break. But ultimately, you know, they allowed too much pass interference, roughing the passer. It's just this team was so poorly coached. There's no mentality with this team. It was an ugly game to watch.
This one's gonna hurt.
Yeah, this one's definitely gonna hurt. Ultimately, this is the game that got Greg Williams fired in Week 13 against the Raiders. Like, what are your thoughts on that? How that game played out from beginning to end?
Oh man, we were in such a great position to win that game. I really wanted it for the players. I really did. I did not want to go 0-16, and to call a 0 blitz on the last play of the game with rookie corners on the outside, with Henry Ruggs on the outside against the rookie corner. Like, there were so many things that screamed out
in Greg Williams' defense, Henry Ruggs is also a rookie.
Henry Ruggs runs a 4.3, 4.2.
As a rookie. Oh. I'm just saying. He's a rookie.
He runs a 4.2 though. You need that.
Someone's got to stick up for Greg, okay?
There's no sticking up for that. That's there's no excuse for that at all.
Okay, I read a story after the game that Adam Gase had his back to the field, like he was there discussing if they got the ball back, and he turned around and saw that play, and that's like he just because he had no problem throwing Williams under the bus after that game, didn't he?
Yeah, he had no problem with it. And what was even crazier is, you know, a reporter asked him, you know, what was going on during that play, and he was saying all this crazy stuff like he didn't like the play. Greg Williams called it. He didn't like the play. He saw the offensive call. He saw what the offense was looking like, and he didn't like, you know, the matchup. And his back was turned to the field. So how are you going to say you didn't like the play the offense is calling, and your back is to the field? Like, he's clearly lying. He's so incompetent. And a few weeks after that, it's questions about the play calling, because for a few weeks, 1 week he's calling the plays, 1 week he's not calling the plays, and you know, he's lying about calling he's saying he's calling the plays when it's clearly on TV that the offensive coordinator is calling the plays and he's dead silent. So he's lying about calling the plays. He's lying about, you know, he was quick to throw Greg Williams under the bus. And, you know, I think they had a screaming match right before that game, actually. Greg Williams said something, you know, during practice that week he didn't like. And it was just, he was actually the one who fired Greg Williams, which is crazy to me. Since when does a head coach have that authority to fire another coach? I thought that's the GM's job. Am I wrong on that?
It depends on the franchise, but I would definitely think that the head coach has a lot of say. I would think the head coach would have a lot of say in that.
I've never seen anything like that. That was just bizarre to me.
Well, what you don't usually see is just so publicly, the guy gets so publicly ripped fast too. Like, it was like was it the post-game presser he did it? Like, where he ripped him? I mean, I don't know. At that point, you're 0-12, 0-13. At that point, like 0-12, like probably just not burn any bridges in your career. Maybe, I don't know.
It was just It was just Adam Gase. I mean, it speaks for itself. I mean, that's who he is.
Rob, does Justice sound like you're at the bar with a buddy that just broke up with a girl and he's like telling you all the stories, all the horror stories of the relationship right now?
Yeah, he really does. And I tell you what, I'm pretty sure Adam Gase not only brings that out for Justice, but a lot of the Jets fans out there. But to that point, I mean, you and your Jets did kind of end on a little high note.
Yeah.
You had this week 15 and 16. You kind of have some upsets win over the Rams and the Browns. How devastated was you to lose that number one draft pick? I know you're raving about Justin Fields and everything and being in that number two position, but how devastated was you to lose that number one pick overall?
Yeah, for me personally, I really didn't care too much for it. Well, not the pick. I really didn't care too much for the fact that we won. One being I really wanted to see the players, win a game. After that Raiders loss, which was atrocious, they definitely deserved to win. To lose out on Trevor Lawrence, it definitely hurts. I know Nick was, very happy about that. I'm sure,
Duval. He'll look better in teal anyway, right?
I'm sure he threw back a shot after that. He was definitely celebrating. But
he actually did. He actually did. I can confirm that.
I definitely was. But I saw a lot of the national media was kind of like,
yeah,
oh man, now this guy's got to go to Jacksonville instead of New York. He must hate his life. I'm like, he's from Georgia and Tennessee, apparently last night, as I learned during the Heisman ceremony last night with his Tennessee jersey on. So Georgia and Tennessee, and he went to rural South Carolina to go to college. Do you think that's a man that's dying to live in New York City / and play in New Jersey? I don't know. Like maybe I'm not reading this right, but I'm pretty sure I'm from Jacksonville. That man's gonna get a house on the beach. He'll be perfectly fine. I think he's gonna like it down there.
Yeah, the fact that he declared, I mean, I think it speaks for itself. He has no problem going to Jacksonville.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, but as far as winning that game and losing Trevor Lawrence, I said it right after. A lot of people at that time were down on Justin Fields. That was just after the Northwestern game where he didn't have his weapons. He struggled a little bit. And, I've been high on him, pretty much all year. I wasn't down on him. I didn't call him a bust or anything like that. I knew he would bounce back, and he did with this performance last week.
Head against Lawrence too, right? Like, I mean, it's not like most years you don't get two quarterbacks like this. I mean, most years Fields is the number one prospect, but he just happens to be in a class with Lawrence right now, so it's difficult for him. But the one thing too, if you're a Jets fan, it's not like the Rams upset was a fluke and then you didn't show up again the rest of the year. You beat up on Cleveland the following week. Ugly game for the Browns, but the Jets dominated that from start to finish. And the Browns made a little run, but it wasn't. Jets played pretty well that game. But last week against New England was competitive into the second half. I mean, they didn't finish it in the fourth quarter, but at least you saw some fight down the stretch. But on the other hand, it doesn't really matter because Adam Gase ends up getting fired. And you talked about why Douglas kept him around. There's some loyalty there. You talked about where you stand on Sam Darnold. So let's skip ahead. Let's break down performance this season overall. Your draft class, you mentioned Becton out of Louisville, the tackle, Mims, wide receiver out of Baylor. Saw some good things out of Mims. I know Robert loves Denzel Mims, don't you, Rob? You loved him coming out of Baylor.
I'm a big Denzel Mims guy. I know, it got to a point where Sam Darnold didn't have a lot of his weapons on the field. And it was one game where he actually did have all those guys on the field. And he looked pretty capable of delivering. So I think that was another thing wrong with Sam Darnold. The fact that, he never really had all his weapons on the field at the same time. And hell, he was not on the field on some of those occasions as well, because he's always been kind of nicked up and banged up. So I think, definitely – me personally, I would definitely have to move on from Sam Darnold, but it is definitely pieces there on that offense. Whoever comes in, Justin Fields or Zach Wilson or, Mac Jones, if a team rolls the dice and draft them that high. So I think it is pieces there with Denzel Mims, Jamison Crowder. P-Ron actually came in and showed that he can play on a high level in the NFL. So I definitely think it's some players there.
Justice, how'd you feel about Mims late in the season? He had some nice games.
Oh, I loved him coming out of Baylor.
Yeah.
He was great. I was a little low on him to begin the process, but I think he really shined at the Senior Bowl. I seeing him throw around those corners. He's so physical. I love seeing him throw around those corners.
Good guy in the
He,
red zone.
oh yeah, oh my God. He can win pretty much any contested ball you really put up there. Strong hands, great body control. I think he reminded me a lot of Brandon Marshall. Big body who can, really win those 50-50 balls. I'm excited to see what he can do going forward.
What'd you think of Ashton Davis, the safety out of Cal as a rookie?
Uh I think I think he had, some up and downs, the typical rookie growing pains. He got burnt a few times by Tyreek Hill, which who doesn't, but he's a versatile player, he's a smart player. From what I've heard from the coaching staff, he's a workhorse. He comes into work. So I'm definitely excited, to see if he can make that jump next year. I think he has, some good upside. Uh, you know, I like his playmaking ability. He can definitely read. His play recognition's really solid. And I think he has a pretty bright future with us.
I know, Rob, you got some good things to say about Jabari Zuninga. He dealt with some injuries at Florida last year.
I haven't seen him much, so tell me,
Yeah,
Rob.
but he dealt some injuries this year too up in New York. We certainly missed him at Florida. You notice a difference on the field when Zuniga was on the field versus when he wasn't.
Yeah, you're right about that, Nick. He's definitely one of those players, that you want to have on the field. But unfortunately, this season with the Jets, it just seems like, he couldn't be on the field as consistent as he should have been. But ultimately, I think that's a good pick for the Jets. What are your thoughts on Jabari Zuniga moving forward, Justice?
Yeah, like I said, I really haven't seen much of him, so I really can't, give a great opinion on him. But watching his Florida tape, he's definitely got some nice burst off the edge. He can definitely play inside. He can win inside. I think that's a natural position for him is inside. He can use his quickness. Uh, he can play on the edge too. He was kind of, his production wasn't really there. He was kind of a rotation guy, but I saw a lot of Jets fans, kind of bashing the pick. It was kind of like a question mark pick to them. But the guy's athletic. He's quick off the line. Hopefully he can develop. Because like I said, man, we haven't had an edge rusher since like 2005. Like it's been like a decade, and we definitely need someone.
Yeah, and then Michael P. Ryan, you got to see a little bit of him this year. Obviously, you're not going to be able to do a whole lot in that offense this year, but he was a solid back at Florida as well. A couple East-West Shrine Bowl guys who we saw down in St. Pete last year, James Morgan at FIU, Cameron Clark, good guys, good developmental projects there. Bryce Hall out of Virginia, solid guy. Injury concerns, though, throughout his career, at the end of his career at Virginia. And then they drafted the punter from A&M in the sixth round. I would say all in all, from what I'm seeing from this class from the outside, I'd give a pretty solid grade to this draft class overall. They despite the season, it looks like they have a nice foundation to build on going forward. But what building blocks did you really see come out of this season? It doesn't have to be from the draft class either. Like if you come in and overlook this, if you're Joe Douglas going into next year, what are you saying? Like we're set here, or we're good at this spot?
The biggest bright spot that I've seen over these last few weeks is the interior defensive line. Quinnen Williams has taken a huge leap from his first year. I've seen a lot of good things from him. He's really tightened up his hand technique. He's a lot quicker. He's definitely added some production there. John Franklin Myers. I don't know if too many non-Jet fans know him, but he's definitely flashed a lot this season. He's a quick guy, a strong guy on the interior. He's definitely made some plays. I definitely like what I've been seeing from him. And our nose tackle, Foley Fotakasu. Not a lot of people know him. He's probably top 5 in defensive tackles in run percentage. So, he's an up and coming young, nose tackle, after Damon Harrison a few years ago, who was one of the best in the league. It's glad to see that we have another run stuffer up there. So the defensive line, the interior, I really like where it's headed. Denzel Mims, I can't say enough about him. I really love him. Mekhi Becton, we all know him, franchise left tackle. The biggest thing going into this offseason, move on from Sam Darnold, in my opinion, really rehaul that cornerback room because we have nobody. It's very weak. And hopefully CJ Mosley comes back this year. He opted out.
He opted out. Yeah.
Yeah, he opted out. People were joking, saying he was trying to collect a check and get away from the Jets. It's kind of funny. I hope he comes back. He's such a great player. Hopefully Blake Cashman, another pick from 2018, 2019. He's definitely had some flashes. He's been injury prone a little bit, but he's shown a lot of great things. If we compare someone else up with Mosley, have Blake Cashman as a third string, I think the linebacking core looks good. And, I also want to see another edge rusher. We definitely need to get someone in there, soon, because if we can get an edge rusher, I think this defensive line can be, top 10, could be a really fierce group.
So you really see some good pieces around the depth chart outside of the secondary. You like to see a lot of help with the secondary in the offseason.
Yeah.
Rob, where are you going if you're the GM of the Jets here? Where are you going for your head coach?
It's a lot of good candidates out there. You have Robert Saleh, the defensive coordinator for the San Francisco 49ers. I know the Jets have some good pieces on that defense side of the ball, just like Justice mentioned with Quinnen Williams. You have Marcus May. And one of the players that I like off the Jets team is Hewitt, the linebacker. I think, he played pretty solid, this whole year. And I know he's not a big time name that a lot of players, a lot of people would know, but I just think he's a solid player and he's a grinder. He brings his lunch pail to work each and every day, and he's going to bring it on the field on Sunday. So I think, the Jets actually have some good pieces. Jamison Crowder on the offense side of the ball. If you can bring in, if Justin Fields is attached to Urban Meyer, I don't know if Urban Meyer wants to take that Jets job and be in that New York market like we talked about, but whoever the Jets go after, I tell you what, they're going to be okay. The number 2 pick, and it's a lot of cap space with the Jets, so I think they're okay.
Yeah, as far as the head coach for me, my number one choice is Eric Bieniemy, the Chiefs offensive coordinator. I've been screaming for him for a few years now. People look at that Kansas City offense and, think it's all, Andy Reid. But, you look at this Andy Reid coaching tree, they've been widely successful. Eric Bieniemy, he's no slouch. The players speak highly of him. They say he's a leader. They say, he's a film guy. He definitely is a creative mind on that offense. So I think that's what we need if we're going to take a Justin Fields to really, get creative on the offense, because that was one thing Adam Gase was creative. So I think that would be a breath of fresh air.
You're talking about the man who made Peyton Manning, right?
I think Peyton Manning made him.
Well, let me ask you this. Are we falling into the same trap? I know Bieniemy's been a name that's been out there for a couple of years now, but are we falling in the same trap? We always anoint these coordinators that come from great situations. Like, hey, Eric Bieniemy, man, that guy can call a game. They score a ton of points. Pat Mahomes is your quarterback. Hey, Adam Gase, man, that guy can call a game. Peyton Manning is your quarterback, dude. It's not going to be the same thing when you get to the new situation. And you almost rarely see those guys flourish to the same degree. There's a couple cases here and there that go, but do you worry about that with a guy like Bieniemy? Of course, he'll get an opportunity to work with Justin Fields, say. So that's obviously encouraging that he did help have a hand in developing Mahomes. That's obviously encouraging. But how much of that is the coordinator and how much of that is the system and the player that he's coaching in that situation? Yeah, that's not just Bieniemy. That's any fill-in hot coordinator here.
Yeah, I think, any first-time head coach,
right,
definitely leaves you uneasy. It leaves you worrisome. You don't really know what they bring to the table. But I mean, yeah, I am, worried, about a first time head coach, but everything I heard about the guy, I've heard nothing but positive things, that may be cliche, we always hear positive things, from most guys, but I've liked him for a few years now. That Andy Reid coaching tree, it has the resume. There's been a lot of successful coaches from Andy Reid who have coached under him. I would love to see Bieniemy. My second pick would be Matt Campbell, the coach at Iowa State.
Iowa State. Yep.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of great things about him.
That'd be interesting.
He definitely turned that school around and gave them a few bowl wins.
Can you find hats like that in New York Jets? Like the hats he wears? Can you find that? Do they make that in the NFL?
I don't know.
Do they make those? So you threw Campbell in there, so you threw me off on that, but because he's more of a defensive guy. But would you go offense or defense if you're pulling the trigger on the hire? You'd go Bieniemy with your first choice.
I think me personally, I would focus on, the strong mentality. Is he a leader? Can he galvanize guys? Can he be that leader for this team? Because that's what we desperately missed, for so many years. People like to, hate on Rex Ryan, but that dude was fiery, man. He held people accountable. He came up to work. He came every day to work, and he demanded, to bring your A game every day. So,
and he loves snacks. It's one of the best all-time best Hard Knocks lines.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I'm just looking, from what I've heard about Matt Campbell and Eric Bieniemy, they're those type of guys, and they definitely want to win, and they bring that winning culture. So, those are my top two candidates right there.
Free agency and the draft obviously going to play a big part of it. What are you focusing on in each? Like, what would you rather see him hammer in the draft versus hammer in free agency?
As far as the draft, Justin Fields, number 2 overall. Move on from Sam Darnold. The second first round pick. If Rashad Bateman is there, because I know he sat out this year. Guys like Devontae Smith, Chase, Waddle, they may go ahead of him because people don't have him fresh in their minds. He sat out and everything. So if Rashad Bateman is sitting there, I would love that pick. He reminds me a lot of like a Kenny Galladay, Devontae Adams type of receiver. I would love that pick, to, pair around the new quarterback. But if he's gone, I'd like to see, a cornerback, Eric Stokes, J.C. Horn, one of those guys if they're still there, because we desperately need it. Edge rushers, if there's an edge rusher there, I'm all for it. We definitely need one. So as far as the draft, the first round, that's what I'm really looking for. Free agency, the big names I've been hearing, the big names that Jet fans will want is Allen Robinson, from Chicago. There's been some talk, he wants big money. Chris Godwin, if the Bucks let him hit the market, he could be a free agent. I would love that pickup. The Patriots guard, it's kind of slipping my mind right now. I forgot his name. He was a free agent last year. They franchise tagged him.
I don't know off the top of my head. Rob, you got that?
Yeah, definitely slipping my mind right now. But I definitely know.
I'll pull up our lads. You guys go ahead. Continue the conversation. I'll pull it up.
Yeah, the Patriots guard from last year. He's a top guard in the league. I would like to see us improve that spot right there. And an edge rusher, Matt Judon, he may hit free agency. So if we can get one of those, 2 or 3 of those guys, I think that's a solid off season. And if we could, get another solid draft by Joe Douglas, I think we're looking pretty good for the future.
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely right there with you, Justice. I think it's just like we talked about earlier. I think this receiver class is pretty loaded. I think this past year's draft from the receiver position was kind of a little bit top heavy, but this draft class from the receivers position seems like it's not as top heavy, but it's just solid all the way through. I mean, everyone knows about the Devontae Smiths, the Rashad Batemans, the Jamar Chases of the world, but once again, you got Diana Brown from North Carolina. You got his Chaz Newsome. You got Kyle Pitts. I mean, I know, he's a big name. So the Jets, if he can slide down, maybe the Jets grab a tight end. Brevin Jordan out of Miami, that's another tight end, and baby Gronk, Pat Frumorth out of Penn State. So he's a local kid. So it's just a lot of ways that the Jets can go. And Joe Douglas seemed like he's heading in the right direction, especially with this year's past draft.
Joe Thuney, guard, North Carolina State.
Yeah, Joe Thuney. Yeah, he's a great guard. He's a top end guard. I'd love to see him, but Robert, man, this wide receiver class is scary, man. I could name so many players beyond the top players that I love in this draft. If we can come out with 2 or 3, about 2 wide receivers in this draft, I would be happy. Shi Smith out of South Carolina, I like him. He's a smaller guy, but
not so shy Smith. That's what I call him.
Yeah, he's a smaller guy, but he
talks a lot.
Yeah, he does. He backs it up on the field. I love him. Oh man, Tylan Wallace.
Tylan Wallace, Seth Williams out of Auburn. You have Elijah Moore out of Ole Miss. So,
Kadarius Toney.
Toney.
I love
Trevon Grimes. So it's just this receiver class is really, really loaded in my opinion. So I think that if the Jets can kind of get 2 receivers out of this draft class, I think they'll be okay, especially pairing them with Jamison Crowder and Denzel Mims moving forward.
The Jets, they've missed. I feel like they always take a really good prospect at tight end, and it just never fully develops. Like Herndon, why isn't Herndon working right now? Even when you're not good, this tight end should be the safe spot. But what's up with Herndon?
What's funny about Herndon is you think back to Adam Gase in Miami. Mike Gesicki, they just drafted him. Adam Gase comes in. The dude disappears for 2 years. And then when Adam Gase leaves, Mike Gesicki jumps on the scene. So it's kind of funny to think about, Chris Herndon before Adam Gase comes here, he has a great rookie year. We're all hyped about him. And then Adam Gase comes and the dude falls off the planet. So it's kind of interesting. It's kind of funny to think about, is it Adam Gase? Who knows? It could be.
And didn't Herndon, if I can recall, I think he had like some off the field troubles as well, and that kind of held him back from actually taking that next step.
Yeah, I think he got suspended 4 games for a substance policy type
for trying too hard.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of Jet fans give up on Chris Herndon, but I would keep him around for another year. I think he's a talented player. He's a good player. I think we could give him another opportunity. But Nick, you talk about top end tight ends. Us drafting them. You got me thinking about
Dustin Keller.
You got me thinking about Jason Morrow, who was a bust.
Yeah, Morrow. He was great in college.
Oh my God, that was such a bad pick. I never understood that pick.
He was good in college though.
He was good in college, but I don't know. He just did not translate for some reason. Like it was a lose-lose situation there.
I feel like the Jets are just one of those teams where it's like you always go for it's like you live in an apartment, you have a ton of debt, and you go out and buy a Mercedes or something, like it's like, hey, look at our new Le'Veon Bell. And it's like, you need to do so many other things before you worry about getting a Le'Veon Bell. Like, do you find that like it's the opposite in Jacksonville because we're just boring across the board. We'll just have nothing. You guys can at least be like, oh, I'm going to go get a new Lev Bell jersey. That'll be cool. We're like, this is depressing. Like our entire existence is just boring and depressing. And we're always talking about the next draft and what's going on next because we hate what's happening now. You guys at least have a couple players that are like fun to talk about every now and then.
Yeah, you're right. It's kind of like when we signed Le'Veon Bell, it's kind of like, buying a new Mercedes and the transmission goes the next day. The car's totaled. So yeah, it was a crappy situation. You guys, man, you guys had some good pieces. I don't know. I think you guys.
That's a whole other. That's a whole other show because that's like that was Tom Coughlin not understanding this generation / just mismanaging the hell out of every, hey, should we re-sign Allen Robinson or Marquise Lee? Marquise Lee had a great season. He's been injured every other year, but Allen Robinson had great seasons every other year, but he was injured this year. Let's go with Marquise Lee. That's like the pinnacle of Jaguar decision making of like, do we pay Blake Bortles or do we pay Jalen Ramsey? Well, the quarterback's an important thing. Let's lock up Blake. Let's like that's just basically was like we had like decision after decision that when you break it down, it's easy to see why the last 2 years have been a disaster in Jacksonville. And we could do a whole episode. The reason I it may look like to people who don't know any better that I'm laughing at you and the Jets, but I'm like I understand the pain. It's like an uncommon bond the Jets and Jaguars can have. Like I just understand the dysfunction and mismanagement that goes on because I watch it every single Sunday as a Jaguars fan. Robert at least gets a break once in a while and lets the Vikings pretend like they're going to win the Super Bowl and then break his heart. They'll be competitive over and over. It's almost worse. We could gang up on the Vikings here for a second, Justice. At least we know we suck. And when we're good, it's like, wow, this is great. But when you're a Vikings fan, you think you're good and other people think you're good sometimes. And then you actually secretly suck when it matters most. Am I wrong?
I mean,
no, you're right about that, Nick. I mean, I tell you what, it's definitely been, especially with the Kirk Cousins era, as a Vikings fan and, as that fan base kind of rally around Kirk Cousins and saying, hey, we definitely need to move on from Case Keenum. Me personally, I think Case Keenum had one of the best years of his career as a Minnesota Vikings. I mean, of course, everyone knows the miracle in Minneapolis with the Stephon Diggs catch. But I tell you what, Kirk Cousins, he's a decent quarterback. He threw for 4,000 plus yards this year. If he has protection, he can throw the ball around. And especially with Dalvin Cook back there with the running game. So my Vikings, we have pieces, but just like you said, we can never put it all together. And I tell you what, our best shot of winning the Super Bowl was definitely, the Randy Moss years when Gary Anderson missed the field goal, and then Atlanta goes on to play Denver in the Super Bowl, the Dirty Bird year. So that hurt my heart. And then another time it hurt my heart.
That was such a good Minnesota team. That was such a good Minnesota team.
Probably one of the greatest Minnesota teams.
Were they 15-1
out there?
Were they 15-1? Oh, yeah. They were awesome that
year. And then the Brett Favre years when Bounty Gate. That was another heartbreaker for me. When Brett Favre came over and he had a career year, tremendous year. Adrian Peterson, Percy Harvin, Sidney Rice, and those guys just had a phenomenal year. And it just kind of went to the wayside, with that Bounty Gate game.
Yeah, man, you guys have had some fun. I mean, even but the thing is, like the Jags, they make the AFC title game a couple years ago. When they beat the Steelers, they come home at like 2 a.m. The stadium, they got people in the stadium rooting them on. Like everyone, the national media would have you think that Jacksonville doesn't have a good fan base. But in reality, this team has just treated their fans like garbage for so long in terms of putting product on the field that people are just so like spaced out on it. And the difference between New York and Jacksonville is when our team sucks and it's November, it's not 14 degrees outside and we have to sit in our house on a Sunday and watch it. We go walk on the beach.
Yeah,
we can go do things. Like, it's a different attention span. And with the newness of the franchise too, being terrible and new is a bad combination because a lot of people, like, let's say like it's a Navy town. People come in, there's a lot of Steelers fans. There's a lot of they bring in their allegiances from everywhere else. And when the team sucks, they keep those allegiances. But when the team's winning, everyone's out there wearing teal. The stadium's full and people are excited, but it's not a market like New York where you can just fill up the stadium every Sunday because you're in New York, or it's not a market like Minnesota that has a semblance of tradition that goes way back. So it's interesting. And it's going to be interesting to see what happens when you get a guy in there like Jalen Ramsey. I would argue we've had stars on the team in Jacksonville, Like, you go back Fred Taylor, Baselli, Brunell, like there's been stars on the team. Jalen Ramsey was the closest thing to breaking through to becoming a superstar that we've had in Jacksonville. I feel like, but I think Trevor Lawrence is going to step in and fill that role. And that's never happened in the history of the franchise. Like, you guys still talk about Joe Namath on Sports Talk Radio every single day up there in New York. And I know that because I tried to listen to New York Sports Talk Radio when I moved up there. And every single day for 3 weeks, they brought up the Jets beating the Colts in Super Bowl III. And I was like, God, these guys got to move on. They got to move on, dude. You got so many sports teams in this area, too. You got the Yankees. You talk about Super Bowl III every day. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, going back to the Jaguars, I'm going to say it right now. Jalen Ramsey is the best cornerback in the league, in my opinion.
He's dead to me.
Right now. He's everything you want in a corner. That man's special. I mean, I don't understand why the Jaguars, chose Bortles over him. It makes no sense to me. I mean, looking at I don't mean to get off topic. Looking at the Jaguars' top 5 picks in the last decade, and to see where they are now, it's scary.
Are you saying you got a problem with Luke Jokel?
Oh, I got a big problem with Luke Jokel. I mean, you look at Luke Jokel, Justin Blackman. You just go down the list. Like,
that's why I was laughing at you early in the episode, because I'm like, I feel like we could do the same episode about the Jags. You do the exact same episode. Oh, you picked that guy over him? Huh?
Yeah, we're used to this. We're warmed up for this. I mean,
every single Sunday, an announcer drops what they consider to be an interesting tidbit of information, but they talk about, oh, did you know the Jaguars drafted a punter in the 3rd round, and 2 picks later, Russell Wilson was drafted by the Seahawks? Yeah, we know, guy. Thanks. Like, that doesn't come up every single Sunday. We're well aware. Thank you.
Oh, my God.
But what's worse? Is it worse being terrible and you're bad, or being Minnesota like Robert and thinking you might be good and then being bad? What's worse? What's a worse fate?
I think it's our situation. At least Robert Robert gets to have those high points. He gets to actually believe
our high points are so high. Like, Rob doesn't have any Bart Scott screaming into the microphone after winning in New England moments. That's a high moment right there. Our high points are super high. Rob's high points are like, oh, great. Next up, let's win the Super Bowl. And then the Vikings, no, we're not going to do that. What do you think, Rob?
I tell you what, I will definitely like to be in the situation that I'm currently in with my Minnesota Vikings, because we actually have the pieces to get the job done. So I think it's a quick build when you have those guys. We talked about, Jamal Adams getting traded for, 2 first-round picks and, Bradley McDougall. I mean, Minnesota Vikings traded Stephon Diggs, and we get 2 first-round picks. And one of those first-round picks, we hit gold on Justin Jefferson. He just broke the all-time rookie receiver record. So I think, with Minnesota, it's just like we have the pieces. It's just like, but it doesn't help when you're playing in the same division as Aaron Rodgers. So I think, that's the stepping stone. So not even getting to the Super Bowl, you have to get past Aaron Rodgers first to get to the Super Bowl. So
same division as Peyton Manning. Same division as Peyton Manning for a lot of years.
So when you're in a division like that with a
Tom
first
Brady
ballot
for 20 years.
Yeah. So we anytime you're in a division with a Hall of Fame first ballot Hall of Fame quarterback like that, definitely it's going to be hard to rattle off division championships and Super Bowl wins. So I think once Aaron Rodgers kind of hit his downside, I think Minnesota can kind of pick back up again, winning that division, rather than instead of winning that division every 3 to 4 years, at least winning that division every 2 years or so.
All right, fellas. Well, we could go on like this for a long time, as people could probably tell. So to wrap up the episode, Justyce, Rob, tell us a little bit about the Extra Point podcast. What do you got cooking? I know you guys are chasing down some big time guests, working on some things with that. Got the ESPN situation in Denver. That's been great for you guys. Tell us a little more about the podcast and where to find you guys.
Yeah, we're doing great things over at the Extra Point on ESPN 1600 Denver. We have some great guests lined up this next month. We've had some great guests on.
Are you allowed to say?
Uh, I think
Secret stuff.
we're keeping that under wraps right now. I think
Mhm.
it's gonna be more of a surprise, but the guests we've had on, are still great guests. We've had on, free agents looking to, break into the league, and Akeem Gordon, a wide receiver, Isaiah Houston, a wide receiver who suffered a freak injury and is still fighting back. We've had some great guys, Merrill Hodge, future a Hall of Famer, ESPN analyst, motivational speaker. We had him on. We're doing great things right now. And if I'm missing anything, Robert, let me know.
Fill it in, Rob.
Yeah, pretty much just to piggyback on what Justin said. Definitely had like some good guests come on, and definitely got some good guests lined up moving forward. Just like Justin said, kind of still working on the dates and everything like that. So want to be a surprise to our audience and every podcast listener out there. So, but once again, definitely doing some great things over there at ESPN 1600, based out of Denver.
It's awesome. Yeah, if you haven't checked it out, check out the show. You can find it on YouTube. Where else can you find it, guys?
Oh, you can find it on ESPN 1600 Denver website. You can download the app. The app is the quickest way. You can just scroll.
The ESPN app.
Yeah, the ESPN 1600 app. Yeah.
Okay.
It's easy access there. We post on Facebook, Twitter, all that. So definitely go check us out and take a listen. It's a great show.
Well, hey, Justice, we appreciate you joining us. Great episode. Stay the franchise for the New York Jets. We'll have to find another reason to get you back on soon, man. Appreciate you joining us, and we'll send you out. We'll send our listeners out with a word from our sponsor, Coach Paint. American Football Stories is brought to you by Coach Paint. Coach Paint is a great tool that allows us to add graphics to player highlight clips similar to the graphics you see on TV. Coach Paint offers the ability to clearly telestrate video while increasing retention of information in a shorter amount of time. Up your game with Coach Paint today.
Thank you for listening to American Football Stories podcast. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel, American Football Stories. We are working to grow our network on YouTube and would love to have you subscribe. You can find us also on Apple Podcasts, on Twitter at American FB Story, and on our website, AmericanFootballStories.com. I am Robert Parker. My co-host is Nick Newsom. This has been another episode of American Football Stories.